Okay, cool. The green flashy things at the edge mean it's recording. Okay, so absolute value equation. Do you guys remember what the absolute value means? Absolute value is these straight up and down brackets. And if I do, say, absolute value of a number, let's say 3. Absolute value are these straight up and down brackets around a number. Do you guys remember what that means? Okay. So hold on. I'll explain it to you as if you've never seen it before. And if you remember, then this will just be a refresher. So absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So the distance a number is from 0. A number is from 0. So the absolute value of 3 is how many units or how many bops away from 0 3 is. So on a number line, so if I draw a number line here, I've got 0 in the middle. I've got 1, 2, 3. How many bops away from 0 is 3? 3. Great. So I got bop, bop, bop. So it's 3 bops away. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay. Is there another number whose absolute value is also equal to 3?
-3.
-3, right? So -1, -2, -3. This is also 1, 2, 3 bops away from 0. So the absolute value of -3 is equal to the absolute value of +3. Now this is kind of that thing, that respecting the negative thing I keep saying. Their absolute values are the same, meaning they're the same distance away from 0. Their actual value is not the same. So like having $3 million and owing somebody $3 million, not the same. But their absolute value, how far they are away from 0, is the same. So there's two kind of different ideas there. Actual value and absolute value. Absolute value is distance from 0. Kind of, sort of. Do you guys remember this from like 5th, 6th, 7th grade?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So now, since we're in algebra, we're going to take this idea that you've seen before and we're going to throw a variable twist on it, because that's what algebra is. Algebra is taking these previous ideas that you've seen and throwing variables into it and making things really confusing. So that's what we're going to do. So, I know, it's exciting. I'm excited too. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take, I'll show you what an absolute value equation looks like first. So we're going to do absolute value of m, we'll use m as our variable today, m plus 10, close absolute value, so these up and down braces, these are absolute value, is equal to 5.
I know this.
All right. Now, here's how you would solve a problem like this. So step number 1, you're going to turn this into, so turn into 2 different equations. Different equations. Now, the 2 different equations you're going to turn it into. Up here, where we had the absolute value of 3 and absolute value of -3, these 2 things have the same absolute value, right? Which means that whatever's inside here, if the absolute value is equal to 5, what's inside here could be 5, and what's inside here could be -5, right? So like this whole thing in here, this m plus 10 could be equal to 5, and then its absolute value would be 5. Or the m plus 10 could be equal to -5, and then when you take the absolute value of it, it would still be 5. Does that make sense? So I'm going to make 2 equations. One equation is going to be m plus 10 equals 5. And the other equation is going to be m plus 10 is equal to -5. Because what was in here could have been 5, or what was in here could have been -5. And if I took the absolute value, it would still be +5, because up here, the absolute value of -3 is equal to the absolute value of +3. Does that make any sense?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So let's go through this here just a little bit, and then I'll try to go back through it with you guys just to explain where this came from. All right. So step number 2 is just you solve both equations. So solve both equations. Both equations. So let me try this, and then I'll go back through it all again, and I'll try to make it all make more sense. So thank you for telling me it didn't make sense, though, and I'll try to make it make more sense. Okay, so let's focus on just the one on the left here. So how would I solve the one on the left? How would I undo plus 10? All right, so I'm going to minus 10 from both sides. So minus 10, minus 10. So, bless you. This goes away. And then what's 5 minus 10? Negative 5. Okay, cool. And then this is just m equal to negative 5. So there's one solution. All right, cool. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing to solve the one on the right. I'm going to minus 10 and minus 10. This goes away. And so what was it, Elijah? Negative 15. All right. I wasn't calling on you to embarrass you. I was calling on you because you had the right answer. All right. Now, step number 3, I just want to check. Just take a second and check. It's not a bad idea just to make sure that our math is right. So to do that, here's what I'm going to do. Okay. So, right. Negative 5 plus 10, what is that?
Negative 5 plus 10.
Great. What's the absolute value of 5? How many boxes away from 0 is 5? Great. Does that check out?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the solution. Great. Emily, what's negative 15 plus 10?
Negative 5.
Okay, so this is where that came from. Negative 15 plus 10 is negative 5. How many boxes away from 0 is negative 5? So does this check out? Great. So those are the two different answers. Kind of, sort of. So this is why we had to have these two answers. We had to have one that was 5 and one that was negative 5. Because we had to have the absolute value of this part in here had to be 5 and it had to be negative 5 for the absolute value to be equal to 5. Kind of, sort of.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Let's try an example of this. I want you guys to copy this example into your notes and then give it a try on your own. Okay. So let's do absolute value of, let's do 2 plus y, absolute value equals 7. I want you to copy this into your notes and give it a try. When you think you've got an answer, the two answers, there's going to be two answers. When you think you've got your two answers, raise your hand. Where's your paper, dude? Come on, man. Get out your paper. Dude, if you need paper, go grab some right over there. I'm not finding scratch paper. Come on, dude. That's one of them. Where's the other one? Yeah, there's another one. You gotta make two equations. What's step number 1? Right? Two equations. Great. Nice job. Good. 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 So once you get the first answer, you can answer that. So what is negative 7 minus 2? It's not negative 5. There you go. That's the other answer. Now, you got to make sure that you're doing that last part to check. So here's one thing that a lot of Algebra 1 students have a tendency to do. And I didn't see you guys do this, which is awesome. So thank you for not doing that. Here's one thing that a lot of Algebra 1 students have a tendency to do, is they'll do 2 plus y equal to 7, which is the easy equation, the positive one. They'll solve this by subtracting 2 from both sides, and they'll get y equal to 5. And they'll think, okay, well up here, it was 3 and negative 3. I already got one answer, so my other answer has to be y equal to negative 5, and just be like, drop the mic, I'm done. Right? Now, Can anybody raise your hand if you can? Can anybody tell me why that's incorrect? Okay, Juju.
Because
2 plus negative 5 is negative 3, and what's the absolute value of negative 3? The absolute value of negative 3 is absolutely not 7. Perfect. So, Juju's saying this is incorrect because 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3, and the absolute value of negative 3 is not equal to 7. You cannot mic drop on that, right? Kanye's not going to interrupt your Grammy speech for that. Okay? Is that too old of a reference? Definitely too old of a reference. Hashtag math teacher jokes. I'm sorry. All right.
But I'm a math teacher, so what I
find funny is suspect. All right. So you can't just jump to the other answer being negative, whatever the positive answer was. So you have to actually do the other equation. You have to do 2 plus y equal to negative 7 and solve it. So subtract 2, subtract 2. Negative 7 minus 2 means y is equal to negative 9. And then take a second and just check it. So if you put 5 in for y, 2 plus 5 is 7. The absolute value of 7 is 7. This one checks out. And you can do it in your head. You can do the check for this in your head. You don't have to actually write it out on paper. Negative 9. 2 plus negative 9 is negative 7. The absolute value of negative 7 is 7. That checks. Right? Okay. Let's try one that's a tiny bit more difficult. It's skosh. Just like a half a turn more difficult. Okay? So, this isn't too bad though. You guys can totally do this. So let's do the absolute value of, let's say we've got 2x plus 4 is equal to 12. All right. Now, to do this one, we'd split it up into 2 different equations still, right? So, Megan, what would one equation be?
2x plus 4 equals 12.
Great. And Michaela, what would the other equation be?
2x plus 4 equals -3.
Great. And then from here, you're solving it just like those 2-step equations we've been doing for quite some time now, right? So give it a try. And try and solve this one. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, I didn't mean for this one to end up. Sweet. Sweet. Okay, you're dividing by you're dividing. Great. And you can always check this, right? Dividing, okay, hold on. So you're going to minus 4 first. Before you divide this, you're going to do negative 12 minus 4 is not negative 12. Is it like money? There we go. And then divide by 2. Nice job. Nice job. This one should be negative 8 because you're doing negative 12 minus 4. Great. All right, nice. So this isn't too bad, right? So that's the gist of absolute value equations. That's as hard as we're getting today.
This is easy.
Great. I'm glad. Well, I mean, that's as hard as we're making it today. Yeah.